Okay, so what was your favorite takeaway food as a child, and how much did it cost back then? How much does it cost now? And is it still as popular with you and with other people as it was back then compared to its popularity now? Think about that. 5 minutes. For me, as a kid growing up, my favorite takeaway food was New York City hot dog stands because I was growing up in New York. I was born in 1982, and back in the 80s, I remember it costing about 99 cents. I remember the 99-cent sign, big red letters on the side right here that said 99 cents. And from 82 to 1990, it doubled, right? From 75 cents to $1.50. That's double the price. Calculating that as a percentage change, lovingly prepared here in this table for you. That's a 100% change. Double. Inflation is a rate, like this hot dog price rate. The change in average prices is expressed as a percentage from year on year. So that means that this 5.4% is the change in the average price of an entire economy, how that changed from year on year. Now, inflation sounds like a very economicsy thing. It's a very popular and common phrase to use in an economics lesson. Why is it relevant for businesses to know what's happening with the average price in an economy? Well, for very broad stroke reasons, it's good to know whether the price of stuff, which is what the inflation rate is going up or down, because it has an effect on the consumer psychology and the person walking by on the street, the buyer, how much spare money they have, and you as a single business, you're competing for a percentage of that disposable income. Still, why do we care? Well, we have to understand what inflation is first, other than the average price. How is it calculated? If we have the demand for hot dogs in this case, as the price of a hot dog goes up, the quantity, the number of hot dogs that are consumed goes down. So demand is downward sloping. As the price of hot dog goes up, though, if you're the one selling it, not the one consuming it, price times quantity. So if I'm going to sell 5 hot dogs this week, but if I start up as a hot dog vendor, but next week if I was a hot dog vendor and the price is doubled, I could make double the revenue, right? Price times quantity. So that attracts more businesses, which means that it's upward sloping. As the price of it goes up, the quantity that is supplied also goes up. Now, if this is just the market for hot dogs, there's no economy that is made up of just one product. All economies have all kinds of ones. Just in this picture alone, we have umbrellas, we have cars, we have buses, jeans, right here in New York City. So to calculate the change in average prices, we have to first calculate what the average price is. So when the market price is established because a quantity of hot dogs is being consumed that is met in reality with a quantity of hot dogs being produced, not everything else to the left and to the right of this little crossroad, which is theoretical, then we have a price and a quantity. So if you take just side note, for the value of this market, we take the length of this part of the box and the length of that part of the box. We times them, right? Basic geometry. You don't have to be a PhD in mathematics to calculate that this would create the area of the graph of this box, which is price times quantity, the value of the market. If this is the supply and demand for the market, if this is the supply and demand of this individual vendor, then that would give his revenue. So the total revenue of all hot dog vendors together creates this space for the market, the value of the market, the demand supply curve of the market. In the same way that we just aggregated all the hot dog vendors in New York City to come up with the price, quantity, and value of the market for hot dogs, if you did the same thing for every single market and every single product in the economy, you would have an aggregate supply and an aggregate demand, and a price of an average price of all things in the economy, and the average quantity of all things, which actually, if we think back to our lesson on GDP, is expressed as a value as well, because you can't add kilos of rice to units of tires. So the way to add that up and aggregate that is also by a value sold. So the price times quantity down here. And so to calculate the average change, we look at the average price in 1 year and how much the percentage in which it went up or down the next year. And you have the inflation rate for that year. Still, why is that important to know? Well, other than how it affects consumer behavior overall, we also, which is a market side, on the marketing side, operationally speaking, we also want to know because we're buying stuff from within our economy as our input for our products. So it affects our costs as well as our revenue. Remember that profit equals quantity times the price that we sell at. In other words, our total revenue. The space underneath for the quantity demand, for the supply and demand of the business, or the market value for the entire market, minus the total costs. Sorry. Let's see. Variable costs plus fixed costs. Which is the total cost. So inflation affects both parts of this equation. Therefore, has powerful implications and heavy impacts on our bottom line, on our profit. So when an entrepreneur thinking of what business to start up, where, or an existing business, looking at what inflation is doing, immediately we're thinking about the supply side and can we still produce affordably? How is this affecting our supply chain, the cost of our inputs, and the demand side? How is this affecting consumer behavior? And how much is coming into the till in terms of our revenue? So that's affecting our, sorry about that, total revenue. And our total costs. Therefore, the big magic number, our bottom line, our profit. So just because the average prices are stable doesn't mean that our costs are. Stable prices in economic terms means that there's a little bit of inflation. So you can see from the table here, if economists and policymakers aim for a little bit of inflation every year, because it means that if prices are going up a little bit more year by year, I mean, it's putting a little bit more profit in our pocket as this slowly rises. And if it's not doing that, then it's good for the economy because only the most effective and growing businesses stay in business. Some call that economic Darwinism. Just because the average prices are stable doesn't mean that your costs are. So let's look back at my favorite hot dog, and my favorite snack as a child, the humble, not so humble anymore, New York City hot dog. So I used a little bit of AI wizardry to come up with a frankfurter price index and a hot dog stand price index. So we have one of our variable costs, a key ingredient, the frankfurter, the meat in the hot dog. The more I produce, the higher that cost goes up. And the hot dog stand price, that's the price at which we are selling, how that's gone up. So without having to give a whole mathematical lesson on what price indexes are, these are all start at 100 because we've taken 1982, the year I was born in, as the base year. So it ignores everything else that happened before it and just focuses from that point onwards. So if 100 percent, if 100 as an index is, let's say 1, it means that whatever the prices were, it's starting from there. Take that as 0, let's say. It's an easy way to just get a visual on what's changed. So 126 is clearly a smaller number than 200, and also a smaller number than 141. 141 is bigger than 126. So what does this mean? This means that the increase, that all the price of all three of these increased over these years, but the rate at which they increased is different for inflation. So CPI index is a way of measuring inflation. The change in our variable costs was an increase, but a slower increase than the average price of everything in the economy. And the average price increase of hot dogs overall, the final product from the hot dog stand with that whole experience while you're on holiday, let's say in New York City, has gone up a lot more than the average of everything else in the economy. So the key takeaway here is to understand that although inflation is a measure of the average price of all products and services sold in the economy, it is a very blunt instrument for a business or an entrepreneur, because as an average, it's like saying if the average height on an island of people might be 6 feet tall, but you won't find a 6 foot tall person anywhere on the island because everybody is quick math here. Half the people are 3 feet tall, and the other half of the people are 9 feet tall. Is that right? It's something like that. It's just an indicative. So I want you guys to, how much time we got? Running out of time. So I want you to take maybe 10 minutes. That's enough for me. 10 minutes to open your favorite AI. It could be Copilot, it could be ChatGPT, Grok, or Meta AI, what have you. And pick a business. It might be your favorite takeaway from the starter task. It might be something else. If you've changed your mind, and do a little bit of research, throw a few prompts in, and try and come up with a little analysis like this that shows how inflation has affected the business in the last 12 months. And off of that, think about the operational side, your costs, and the demand, the marketing side, the demand and consumer behavior, how that's been affected, why that's been affected. When I did the same thing, I found that the reason why the New York hot dog stand prices has increased so quickly, I'll give you guys 10 minutes to do that. When I did it, what I found was that the hot dog stand price increased for 2 reasons, both supply on the operational side and on the marketing side. Marketing wise, in the 80s, New York was a really scary place. It wasn't really as attractive for tourists as it is today. So with more consumers coming in, more people, and not just consumers, but tourists who have the tourist mentality, which is I'm on holiday, so why not splurge a little bit, willing to spend more, businesses could raise their prices to meet that increased demand. And that was also on the operational side, the costs were increasing because New York as a development real estate wise was going up. So renting a little patch on the corner street, the cost of that rent, that fixed cost for the business was going up. licenses to operate a cart of any kind, street food, was also going up a lot. So to compensate, to make up for those costs, the hot dog vendors were raising their prices. Um, Outside of fixed costs, the variable costs, the meat and stuff like that, were not going up. They were going up, but not that much comparatively to other ingredients for other businesses. They were going up a bit less. Remember, think 3, 6, 9, 12 feet tall people on the island. What did you guys find out? Okay, so to wrap things up in the plenary, I want us to think about, why is it essential for a business to track both input prices and consumer behavior during inflation? Why is it important to unpack the reasons why inflation has happened? If it's a cost thing or if it's a demand thing, generally within the economy, and then drilling into that a little bit deeper in terms of the individual markets of the individual inputs into your business, both variable costs and fixed costs, and then digging in with market research and other marketing tools a little bit deeper into the consumer behavior, not just within the economy, but within the market, and even to drill into the individual business, the macro, micro, and if you will, nano economics of the inflation. Thank you.